Take it.
It's February 27th, 2018, and this is WDYTA. I'm Drea.
I'm Alan.
I'm Gavin.
What do you think about Batman and Bill Finger, Alan?
So, I asked you guys to watch this documentary earlier this week. My voice just cracked, by the way.
Just had puberty.
Puberty happens for us all.
Happening right now, live.
It comes for us all.
Basically, a lot of people don't know that, if you read any Batman comics from way back in the day, even if you watch any of those movies, including Tim Burton's Batman, right? The credit is always given to Bob Kane. But a lot of people don't know that there's this other guy named Bill Finger, who was one of the guys who helped him, basically co-create Batman. I mean, he pretty much created the Batman that we all know, see, and love right now. Bob Kane's original version of Batman was, in my opinion, garbage. If you would,
Well, you mean you don't love that hawkish kind of Birdman guy?
in the red leotard?
You know what? I thought that was interesting. So we're talking mostly from information from the documentary. What's it called? Batman and Bill Finger?
Batman and Bill.
Batman and Bill.
Batman and Bill? Okay.
On Hulu.
So in the documentary, it shows early works of Bob Kane's idea of what Batman should be. And I thought it was really interesting because the original Batman design looked like Robin and could have been a Birdman. So I was like, is that how Robin came to be? At any rate. But
I mean, was it the domino mask, you mean?
Right. Yeah, he had a domino mask. He had this red leotard, and then he had static, hard wings.
Right.
How you gonna run around with those things on your back all day? But then Bill Finger, he was a kind of like a ghostwriter for DC, right? He basically was helping other people. What happened? The screen just went dark.
You're good.
I see you.
So he basically helped, he ghostwrote a lot of the issues, and he was helping other writers, other artists create comic books and stuff. So
was he?
Yeah, he did. I don't know which other ones he did off the top of my head. I'd have to look that up. But he was he did. He's mostly known for his Batman stuff, right? Well, now he is. But at that time, he did stuff so when I did a quick search on his Wikipedia, he even worked on some Green Lantern stuff, which is one of my favorite characters too.
Right, but I wondered if that was all after. I thought Bob Kane was already had his foot in the door with whatever company DC was before it was DC, and so Bill Finger was working with him. But the difference between a ghostwriter and someone who concepts a character was delineated in the documentary. And so, to me, Bill Finger did so much more than just ghostwrite. He, came up with this character.
Well, I'm not talking about for Batman. I'm talking, for other issues, other comic books.
But that was all after he worked with Bob Kane. It wasn't before. He wasn't already working for DC.
Yeah, I misunderstood that. Yeah, the Batman stuff, he came up with, the cape, the cowl, the costume. He created,
Yeah, that I thought was really interesting because
every villain that we have in the Batman comics was created by Bill Finger.
Right. Yeah, basically all the good stuff about Batman.
And then Bob Kane did a very shady, asshole-ish thing, which was go to DC and then convince Bill, I stole the idea, so I'll give you a cut. And then he did the next. Bill did the worst thing he could have. He agreed to a handshake deal.
Well, I don't even know if that's what happened. I think
there's no contract, and he just
But I think what probably happened. This is hypothesis, but I think that Bob Kane had a relationship with DC Comics, whatever it was called at the time, and Bill Finger didn't. So I think Bob Kane set it up so that he could work with Bill Finger without DC knowing they were working together, because Bob had all the connections.
Yep.
So I think that was the way it was presented at the beginning, and Bill Finger was okay with it at the time because comics weren't really anything yet. I was, while we were watching the documentary, I was likening it to H.P. Lovecraft and how he wanted to write science fiction sci-fi, and at the time it was really looked down on. And if you wanted to write if you wrote science fiction sci-fi at the time, you wouldn't be taken seriously writing anything that was literary. So I'm is this a possibility that Bill Finger was worried about his reputation? Not that this really matters. You should still be giving him credit. But I wonder if this negotiation happened because Bob was the one that had the connections with DC Comics, and maybe they were worried about how it would be received if Bill Finger was helping out if DC Comics knew about it.
I think if they knew about it from the from the get-go, it would not have been as bad.
No, I don't necessarily agree, because you brought up Shuster and Siegel before we even started talking, and the comics industry, there was no rules, there was no protections for artists or writers. Like, and like what I got from the documentary was eventually it was kind of brought out, like everyone kind of knew Bill Finger was helping, and no one really cared enough to make him a partner, to make him anything. It was like, yeah, Bill Finger has his finger in everything, right? But it's not. But at the time, it was the industry so new that there was no rules. So it's like,
and we're also talking about a much smaller amount of money than what comics are worth today.
Right. I mean, the thing with Siegel and Shuster, I think they created the character, and then they wanted to.
Before we get too far down the Shuster and Siegel thing, let's make sure everybody knows who they are. So they are the guys who created Superman.
Yeah.
And then with DC again, right?
A couple of young kids living in a one-room apartment in like New York,
right?
Trying to make ends meet, working for like crappy, was it pulp comics, pulp crime fighting, crime writing, like
yeah.
Like I think that's what's frustrating is like even when we were watching the documentary, it's like at first Gavin was very suspect, like he was like, yeah, but he agreed to this and blah, blah. And I'm like, but this industry was not what it is right now. Like, like.
Yeah, it's a different time. But I still, okay, so the beginning of the documentary about, the Batman and Bob, or Bill. Bob and Bill. The beginning of the documentary, I'm just hearing the beginnings of the story, and I'm like, he just signed a bad contract.
But the thing that frustrates me about this is that Bill and Bob are friends, and it reminds me of this stupid reality TV show. It was a hidden camera show, and these people let this guy. He goes, "I have one thing. Can I get in front of you?" And he's an actor, and they go, "Sure." And he wins $1,000, and all of a sudden they're up in arms. They're like, "We should have won that $1,000. We were next in line, and we let you be in line." So anyway, it just reminds me of this thing of like. Helping someone, you're just helping someone. Comics are going nowhere. Comics are a made up thing.
And
they're not doing anything.
Striking gold.
When it starts striking gold, you're just helping your friend. What if Alan called you and said, "Hey, I need help on this design for this character"? You'd be like, "Sure, here's some help." And then down the road, it's like this character becomes the leading character of a DC comic that makes tons of money. That's where it becomes a problem.
Let's not stop Gavin from helping me on a future character, please.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that everyone looks down. I feel like at the beginning of this documentary, people might have a reaction to go, Bill signed up for that. That's what Bill signed up for. He signed up to have his stuff stolen. That's his own fault. But to me, that's really frustrating, and not putting yourself in the shoes of someone who's helping. They were friends. Bob and Bill were friends.
I mean, Bob and Bob took advantage of that, right? Like,
exactly. And DC was an industry, or pre-DC, whatever it was. I mean, the whole comics industry at that time was so new that it was made to take advantage of people. That's what we know about, industries right now. They're made to take advantage until you set rules.
No, yeah. All these characters are now worth millions upon millions of dollars.
Billions, probably. Yeah.
Billions of dollars, right? And the problem is like the ownerships have switched so many to the point where DC owns I think since I don't know who owns rights to Batman. I mean, Bob Kane is dead. Bill Finger is dead. I think Bill Finger's family got his name credits on most of the stuff coming out. Now, if you see anything now, it says created by Bob Kane with Bill Finger. Right?
Yeah, no, that was funny. Halfway through the documentary, I Googled it, and the first thing that pops up in Google is Bob Kane and Bill Finger. And so it kind of ruined the ending for the documentary, but in a good way. I was like, yes!
Well, most people know that. Anyone who, like I was so happy to see that documentary, because that's a story I've heard growing up, right? Which what's his name? I had to look it up.
Wait, what do you mean is this story? You had heard Bill Finger before this documentary?
Oh yeah, man, this story's been around for forever.
I didn't know that. No, well, okay, so that's interesting.
I was a controversy when Tim Burton's Batman. What is it? The first one? It's called Batman, right?
Yeah.
I think when that movie was coming out, this was hyped up again to the
that
fans were like, "Were you gonna?" So here's the thing, right? Fans can argue to give credit, but fans don't have the power, right?
Sure.
Nobody, I think, like in this documentary,
Well, I think
you hear this guy kind of like he's not family, right? He's just a guy doing a documentary. But when he finds,
they need an heir,
right, and then he found out about a son, but the son had passed away. Then he finds out about a granddaughter, and
well, it was even more bleak than he had passed away. He was gay, so assumed to have no children and passed away.
Right. So then they find out he has a
spoiler alert for the documentary, I guess.
We're giving away stuff. This is stuff that this documentary. It's been in the works for a while, but my point is like the stuff about Bill Finger's been around for a long time. If like you can probably talk to anyone who's a big comic book fan that owns a comic book store, and they'll be like, oh yeah, like it's not like I was excited to see like Kevin Smith in there because Kevin Smith's one of those dudes who like constantly would bring up that. But its problem is like DC never gave him credit, and then finally I think it was with the Zack Snyder Batman and
Superman versus Batman.
That's like one of the first times you see it on film,
which is such a bummer because that movie was such shit. But whatever. But that's
his name's on it now.
It's interesting to me.
It's in the comic books too, though, right now. Like, so if you were to like open up a new Batman comic,
I think anything. I hope with Batman branded on it. But I think it's interesting that you knew that going in, Alan. Because what's interesting when I was watching this documentary, because I love Batman, and I love the first Batman by with Michael Keaton by Tim Burton. I love Batman Returns. I love those two. Like, if you were to ask me which are my favorite Batman, I wouldn't say Nolan. I would say the Tim Burton ones.
Well, I learned about that.
But what's interesting to me is that you're saying you knew that going in, and I felt like guilty. I felt guilty watching this documentary and seeing 1993, seeing this hype for these movies and these comics and knowing that I didn't know who Bill Finger was. So it was interesting that you knew.
Let me put it this way. Like, I didn't, this documentary gives you a very extensive background on what happened, right? Like, I had a basic concept of it because when I was, when I saw that movie as a kid, when I saw, there's a whole book, I have it in storage somewhere. It's an old one. It's got like Michael Keaton on the cover as Batman. And like the third or fourth page in there is a fucking full page of Bob Kane holding, like Batman #1 or something.
Right.
The creator, Bob Kane, and I was just like, oh shit, this is what this guy looks like. And in my head, I was like, in my head, I grew up thinking that Bob Kane created Batman, period. But my cousins were the ones who were like, no, man, there's a whole backstory to this.
Right.
And then I hear all this stuff. Now, and then that's a name that, like, how old was I when that came out? It came out like 89. So it's like 10.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So like, it's
I was 3 then. So that's why I didn't know who it was.
Yeah. So like, I'm like, and that's a name that like, if every once in a while would pop up in conversation, but people didn't really discuss it, right? Because it was like, what are you gonna do? Like, it's the same deal with the creator of Superman. They sold the rights, and like I was telling you guys earlier, like I was reading up on how like the family every year tries to get the credit back, like the rights back, but
they have the rights though. They
have the names and stuff, but they don't have full rights to their.
They don't have rights to
DC
Superman.
Is never going to give up full rights. DC
just have credit.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, that's what Bill Finger got, right? Like, and that was a victory. That was a victory.
Credit. Yeah.
That was a victory.
That was his victory. I mean, honestly, the fact that when people went to bat for him and fans were starting petitions stuff, they wanted one basic thing first: give the guy credit for helping create this character.
Right. It's interesting because, once you give him credit, and I think this is something that DC was probably really worried about, was once you give him credit, suddenly he has claim, like the heir has claim to that money.
Well, they were already giving her money.
They were already giving her some. See, that was real shady too, because they were like, "Oh, here's a little bit of money. We're just gonna grease the wheels a little bit. Come out to these events."
Right? They took her to events and stuff, and she partied with them and all that on the red carpet. But then they made that extra push where they gave her a check, like that hush check.
Yeah. And the thing I was so worried. I'm like, oh my God, they bought her off. They bought her off. This isn't gonna happen. And then here's the weird thing. Okay, so Bob Kane made shitloads of money off Batman, right? So there's a tape in the documentary of Bob Kane talking about the percentage of Batman that Bill Finger created.
Right.
Math is way off.
Well, right, but he puts a percentage on it, right?
Like 50%.
He says at least 50%, right? He says 50%. He says like 40%. He says 25%, whatever. He's like throwing some numbers out.
He said Bill gets 50%, I get 75%, and I went, "That's horrible math."
That's not how that works. Yeah, but here's what he says. Bob Kane says 50% at some point, right? Which means that Bill Finger should make as much money.
Correct.
As Bob Kane.
Yeah, absolutely.
If he made 50% of Batman and Bob got paid X amount of money, that means Bill Finger should get paid also X amount of money. So
what's sad is he said it at a point where he's so rich and so much older in his life.
It doesn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Well, yeah, that's like when he was like he did that interview where he was just like, Bill gets some of the credit for this. Bill should. I feel bad about that. I wish I can go back 15, 20 years and give him credit.
15, 20, not all the way to the beginning. 15, 20, yeah.
Just 15 or 20. It's like he was all over the board. I think I'm like, what kind of drugs are you on? Because like the dude is dead. His son is dead. I'm like, who are you gonna like now you're saying it? Because I feel like in his head he's like, whatever. And then on top of that, like in the documentary show how he talks about how he sketched a version of it earlier.
Yes.
Oh, and it was totally like planted. Yeah.
Oh my God. I was like, this guy is like narcissistic, like.
No, but this is the thing. He had to make himself believe, right? Or your entire life's a lie.
It's like that George Costanza bit where he's like, if you believe the lie is the truth, then it is the truth,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that's okay, but kind of off topic. I don't know. It's interesting to me how an artist needed a writer to go, why does he have wings? That doesn't make sense. Give him a cape. Why? No, this doesn't make sense for him to have a domino mask. Give him a cowl. So he puts fear in the characters. That was interesting to me that he needed a writer perspective to make this character better.
I mean, if that is how it went down, that to me says Bob Kane's not a really good artist. Or he's not a designer, right? Yeah. So there's a difference between an artist that is able to design and an artist that is not able to design. Well, let's remember,
I mean, they're pretty young at this time when this is happening. Like, they're very young in their careers.
So Bill Finger is also obviously thinking about things in terms of symbolism and how do we instill a feeling in people, which that's what resonates, right? So Bob Kane, not thinking along those lines, he's probably thinking, let's just come up with this character and I'm just going to draw him and whatever. And like, there's definitely a place for artists who draw really, really well and just draw other people's characters or whatever. That's not like, doesn't necessarily make them lesser artists. It just makes them a less of a designer, right? Like that's where I think Bill Finger comes in. And okay, so I'm gonna play devil's advocate for just a minute. And I'm gonna say, so how much of Batman is created Batman would not be as big as Batman is without DC, right?
Right.
So,
which is what they say in the documentary.
This is where things get weird, is how much of Batman does Bob Kane own? Does Bill Finger own? Does DC own? And like, if somebody has an idea and creates a character and then sells that character, are they entitled to anything?
I mean, I feel like if you create a character, if you have a character and you create a character, you own the rights to that character. But if you sell the rights to somebody, in this case, let's say DC Comics, right? I should still maintain I should still have the right to say I created that character.
Well, here's the thing that's weird. I think in pretty much every other industry, if you create something and then sell it, like let's say I create a board game.
Yours, right?
Yeah, let's say I create a board game and then I sell it to a publishing company or whatever, and I sell the rights to it, and that's all theirs now. My name is not necessarily on it. I mean, I guess you can negotiate for that, or let's say I invented, I don't know, like a type of screwdriver, and then I sold that to a company. Like, they don't credit me on the screwdriver. You know what I mean?
But again, that I have a problem with that because you are comparing it to modern day standards of contract and negotiation.
True.
Where at the time
are different.
Like Shuster and Siegel, you had two 19-year-olds. I don't know how old Bill and Bob were, but you had two 19-year-olds who are trying to make ends meet. Who comic industry doesn't exist at this point.
We're just selling characters.
We're just selling characters.
Well, right, but
DC goes, I'll pay you $1,000 for these characters, and they go, hell yeah, I'll take $1,000. I'm like starving, you know.
But here's the thing: had they not sold Superman, would Superman be anything right now?
I see your point. But does that mean that to sell it when the industry doesn't exist means that you don't deserve any right to it, even though someone who has more capital than you can market it and make it something?
Well, right, and you know, now in today's day and age, we're seeing some of those gatekeepers go away. But without, like at the time, without DC Comics, Superman doesn't become anything.
I don't. But it wasn't even DC Comics. It was like a pulp.
It was
or whatever it was. Whatever it was. Right.
It's Action Comics.
Action Comics.
Right. So if they hadn't sold Superman,
and Batman was Detective Comics.
Well, that's DC.
No, it's not.
But it was
DC's not Detective Comics? They're separate?
Superman and Batman? Well, could they own different pulp
and then became one at some point? Oh, interesting. Okay. I don't know a ton about comics. But so yeah, this is kind of my question though, is
but it's
like,
interesting
do these artists have any claim to these ideas after they've sold them? I'm playing devil's advocate because I think that artists should be credited for the things that they create.
Well, you have an understanding now as an artist, and so does Alan. I mean, modern day artists do that. These artists did not.
I mean, I think nowadays, if you like say I create a character and I'm going to sell it to Marvel or DC, I wouldn't give them. I would probably maintain a percentage.
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of like what Stan Lee has done with all his characters, right?
Yeah. Well, he's a writer.
So what? Okay. So I think it's a different. Okay.
He's maintained a certain amount of rights to every single character. Like Marvel owns a chunk of characters. Fox owns a chunk of Marvel characters, or did, and they sold it all to Disney now. But Stan Lee still gets like a cut, I think, or he gets credit at least.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is like, okay, so you make a character. Let's say you've made some stories about this character, and then you sell that character and the stories to a larger company. I think in that situation, you probably deserve credit because you sort of like built the foundation for that character.
I think it's like hey, this might go somewhere. I'm going to get like 0.01% of royalties. At the time of Siegel, Shuster, Bill Finger,
there
Bob
wasn't
Kane,
any idea that
there
was
wasn't any idea.
I get that. But what I'm talking about is if you sell an idea to someone, do you deserve to be credited for that idea? Like, let's say, now I think this does happen in scripts, right? If somebody sells, so Guillermo del Toro bought the idea for Shape of Water.
Correct.
Oh.
And he credits, does he credit the person who got the idea from? I don't know if he does in the movie.
In the movie, but I think he's gone on record to say I bought it from.
Right. He definitely talks about it, but like, there's not a credit in the movie for the person he bought it from, I don't think.
Is there?
It's not in the main title. I can remember.
Right.
I don't know though.
I mean, I'd be curious because that to me that matters. I wonder like if that adds, some weight to this argument. I think if, like, do you credit somebody who has an idea for a script or whatever? If you bought that script, that idea from them, you paid them for that idea. Do they then get to come back and say, oh, this actually worked out, so now I deserve more money and more credit? Like, I
don't know. What's interesting is to compare what happened to Stan Lee and to these people. Because, like, it's not something we looked up about why Stan Lee gets that credit. I don't remember him having to fight for it.
Right.
And Marvel, according to Wikipedia, started in 1939.
Right. I'm trying to play devil's advocate a little bit here because, us as artists, we want to see our name on everything that we've done. And we want to, have credit where credit's due. If we made a character and then sold it, we would like to think that, hey, we're entitled to some of that because we made that character. But if you sell that character to a company and that character becomes something big because you sold it to that company that it would not have became if you did it all yourself, do you deserve any of that?
Right. But
there's a whole thing here about Stan Lee about how it says he doesn't own any of the characters despite being the creator of many of them, most notably Spider-Man and the X-Men. But in 2002, as of 2002, he wasn't being paid a dime for Spider-Man or X movies. So in 2002, he sued Marvel for a breach of contract, and then a federal judge awarded him 10% of Spider-Man film profits, as well as every other Marvel film based on characters he created.
Oh.
Later overturned, and Stan was apparently paid $10 million. He then signed over rights to the characters, making him unable to claim anything. This affected his Stan Lee Media, an online comic site, where shareholders thought that Lee owned the rights to the characters to those eventual blockbuster films, which he didn't. While Stan Lee Media went down in 2001, shareholders sued him, and Marvel to the tune of $750 million.
Oh,
wow!
Man, comics got dirty real quick, didn't it?
When they heard that Lee settled his Marvel lawsuit out of court, which was at $10 million, they believe that money should have went to Stanley Media shareholders. The lawsuit was dismissed in February 2011 and has been reported is currently. It has been reopened and is currently underway, but now they're suing justly, who they feel improperly signed over rights to Spider-Man, X-Men, Hulk, Thor, etc. Marvel and current parent companies Disney were not named in the lawsuit. That sucks.
Damn, yeah, I didn't know that.
Active figure in the movie. Well, that sucks because now he's being sued by himself, but he's probably like, man, I'll be dead in like 5 years, bitches.
Okay.
I mean, he should care. So that's the kind of stuff. Like, I feel like, for example, like I'll use my own series as an example. I'm working with a friend who's my writer, right? He's co-writing the stuff with me, and I'll give him credit as being a co-writer because he's taken a bunch of stuff I've written and just embellished the shit out of it, right? And some of it's great, and we get into arguments about the writing all the time. But like the contract that I have with him is basically saying he is hired on as my writer. Like, he's getting credit in the book, but he's basically a contractor I've hired to work with me. I'm not going to give up the rights to the series that I started years ago.
He's work for hire is what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah, this is definitely something I wanted to talk about, is the sort of the current state of freelance and how basically any company you work for as an illustrator in the sci-fi fantasy space is work for hire contract. So that means you come in, you do whatever artwork they ask, you design characters, you do all this stuff, and then they own all of it.
But the difference to me is Alan is also like, an artist. He's not a multi-million-dollar corporation with funds for marketing. Right. So to me, Alan is different than this idea you're talking about, or who DC was, or who Marvel was.
But they're also the reason why I think companies are putting themselves in this position where this is what they do is because they don't want somebody to have a bigger slice of the pie. They want it clean, they want it done. You did the work, we get it. We own it now. You got paid. Our contract over. That's it. That's the end of it. So I guess I'm just like, do we need to open up the discussion with employers that we want a different kind of contract?
Yes.
Well, this is the thing though, is that there's so many artists out there that are good enough that you can't negotiate that. There's too many artists that are willing to do work for hire, and they're willing to give away their ideas.
Right.
That if you want to own all of your own stuff, you have to go indie. You have to do it yourself. You got to use Kickstarter. You got to build these characters.
You bring up a good point. Like, so we know about Batman and Bill Finger, but I'm curious, is this happening to modern day?
Oh yeah, 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Time. I mean, there's.
So, yeah, that's an interesting thing. Like, we have a friend who designed characters for Magic the Gathering. They don't get credit for those characters. They don't get any profit shares. They don't get royalties.
They get paid to do the job, and that's it. They don't get those cards could be some of the top-selling, most popular cards, and they get nothing from it.
So you're telling me that they created those characters.
So Wizards of the Coast creates the character brief.
So that's the difference. So that's the difference laid in the documentary. The documentary says the ghostwriters come in and come up with storylines for characters already created.
Yeah.
And that's accepted. To me, the difference between Bill Finger is he helped create a character. So you're saying that these artists come in and already make art for characters that already exist.
So they visualize the character, though.
Yeah, he helped. Like,
what does that mean?
Okay, so when you're hired on from a company like Wizards of the Coast or whatever, they give you a brief. They say, this is what this character should look like. Here's his personality. Here's how we want, like, here's where the kind of environment that they're in. This is the type of mage they are. But then the artist creates the visual representation of that character.
I think they should get a cut. That's character creation.
They do get an artist credit on the card. But here's where stuff gets weird is then that character is reproduced by, the other thing too is they bring in a concept art team that concepts the characters first before they send them to the illustrators. The concept team doesn't get credit on the cards. The illustrator of the card gets credit. So you have a concept team that's coming up with these characters that got hired internally at Wizards of the Coast, who is not getting credit for anything, who is not getting profit shares.
Oh, and they're internal, yeah.
And there's also, you know, writers that work there that came up with these characters. It's like there isn't like one person at Wizards of the Coast that's coming up with these characters.
Interesting.
So this is a weird situation. And
writers don't exactly show up on the cards, so
they don't show up on the cards at all, right?
Concept artists don't, like you're saying, yeah.
So yeah, here's where it gets really weird: is they're taking these Planeswalker characters now, and they're turning them into comics, and they're turning them into movies, and they're turning them, and it's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And these artists aren't seeing anything; they don't get anything from this. They're the ones that came up with the characters. They're the ones that concept the characters. The ones that visually represented the characters.
That's sticky.
Yeah. Right. So does this Bill Finger case open up artists to say, hey, this got way bigger than what I even realized it could be at the time, and I need some more compensation here. And their contracts are probably ironclad. They're not going to be able to do anything about it.
But I think I think part of the problem is back then there weren't as many comic book artists out at one chunk, right? Like if somebody offers you if Wizards of the Coast contacts you, for example, and says, Gavin, we want you to do a card, and you're like, I want these rights, I want this, and that. They'll just be like, that's cool. We'll just go find another guy, you know?
Yeah, 100%. Yep.
And they won't even skip a beat, you know? They'll just, and then the same thing will happen. Let's say that guy, they'll just keep going down the line because there's going to be one artist in that group who's like, yeah, I'll do the card.
Yeah, 100%. So, well, especially because like Magic, as far as like companies that pay fairly well, Magic's the top tier, right? Like as far as sci-fi fantasy illustration goes, Magic pays the most of anybody. So yeah, somebody who's used to making, you know, $300 on a card is really excited to make $1,000 on a card.
Yeah,
but what they're not realizing is that the card that they made that they got paid $1,000 for is making Wizards of the Coast substantially more money than that.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's shady.
I mean, at the end of the day, like it's not going to happen, but it would be awesome if Wizards of the Coast were signing. And I don't want to keep pinpointing Wizards, but any company that that hires out an artist to do a job would give them a percentage credit, right? Like I've tried that with some of these gaming companies that reach out to me. I've been like,
they won't touch it.
They won't touch it, but I've been like, is there a chance that if your Kickstarter goes, like, let's say, for example, they want to make 10,000 their Kickstarter, but then they end up making like 90 to 100,000, and I'm like, is there a chance if you hit a certain number, I can get a percentage back as having been the guy who helped create the artwork for it,
right?
And or is there a chance the board game is out, and you sell X amount for every X, I get a percent? They're like, no, like they don't want to touch that. Because then what happens is if they do it for me, they're going to have to do it for a bunch. The problem is it has to become something that companies want to do.
Well, it has to. I think it has to become something that all illustrators stand for.
That's the problem. You're not going to. Yeah, exactly. I get what you're saying.
The only way you're going to do that.
Part of the problem is no one knows how to price themselves too,
right?
Or value themselves.
Price themselves all over the board, but you're never going to get. You won't even get a 50% cut on illustrators to say, I'm going to fight for this, and another 50% that says, that's cool. It's such, it's like the larger percentage of illustrators are just going to say, I just need the job. I'm going to take the job.
Right. And the only way that that's going to change is if illustrators ever get together and make that decision. But even then, you got to have it like 80% buy-in. You need a majority buy-in.
Yeah, exactly.
So what I find interesting, too, is what I got from the documentary. Is like he goes to Bob Kane, the guy who's like, I need a character by Monday. And Bob Kane goes, I'll get you that. There's still, I feel like the same gap between writing, between art exists, where they don't know, where the person asking for the thing typically does not know what it takes, what work it takes to put in to make the thing.
Right.
Well, you know, what I thought was interesting about what you just said was, that's when he was talking to Stan Lee in an interview. That was Stan Lee he was talking to. He actually does also say, I'll get it. He's like, I said I'll get it by Monday, even if I had to steal it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, he totally does.
He said that to Stan Lee. You're right.
I stand there like, what?
Yeah.
You know,
but he says it again, though, and it reminds me of being a writer. You know, I'm a copywriter by trade, and I went for my first interview at Party City. I got the job. Oh, I shouldn't say. Should I say?
It's too late now.
Product copywriter. I was a product copywriter. I was writing for party hats.
List, Drea.
Whatever. I was writing for party hats and like whatever. And the executives had an idea that copywriters could write 100 products per hour. We average.
That's nuts.
If you write well, you could probably write well, like to sell a really good product or to sell a shitty product well. You could probably write 3 an hour. They wanted 100 an hour. So it's just interesting to me that this divide, this idea of what it actually takes to produce the thing that's good, still exists and is so skewed. Like the thing that exists when Bob Kane and Bill Finger were creating stuff exists now. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm sure. I know it does in artists. Hearing you and Alan or Gavin talk about it.
Let me point out that these comic books that were created, I did a quick search on the most expensive comics, right? The 5 most expensive comic books ever sold. Right now. Action Comics #1, first appearance of Superman, sold for $2.16 million.
So this is like collectible stuff, though.
This is an original. Yeah, these are like the value of these comics have also gone up, right?
Yeah, that's like secondary market. That's not even like where the real money is. The real money is in merchandising and movies and.
Not even the movies, it's the merchandise.
Like Marvel movies
Royalties.
just passed freaking like what, $14 billion or something? Like that's real money.
I think selling to Disney was one of the on one hand, it's like, damn, you sold to Disney, but on the other hand, it's like one of the smartest moves they did because Disney literally has they apparently have a surplus of money, obviously, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah. Disney's got freaking Mickey Mouse money. It's ridiculous. So, all right. Back to the writing thing for a minute. They wanted to do 100 an hour. That's 1.6 products a minute.
Exactly.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. That's what I mean. There's a divide.
Somebody
so
take that job?
Yeah, she worked there.
Well, no, but I had a manager who said, no,
right.
That's not physically possible. And if we want good copy that sells products, that's not possible. But anyway, what I was going to say is like that guy asking Bob Kane for that comic character is not that far off from that guy asking you, Alan, for that video game concept or, you know, whatever, like where Gavin used to work for that whole entire marketing concept by Monday. Like, it's just interesting that this divide still exists. And it reminds me of a comic we read where it's like, man, you're so good at art. How'd you get so good? It's a God-given talent. I wish I was good at art. Like, it's like an idea that, oh, you're just born with art. You're just born that way. And it's like, no, it took hours of skill and possibly college and like I have loans and like rent to pay. So if you could pay me a living wage, that's much more worth my time. Like that would be great. But it's not viewed that way. It's viewed as, oh, you know, you draw and you like drawing. So get me that thing by Monday.
Well,
you know what I mean?
A lot of people, it's not perceived as a profession. It's perceived as a hobby.
Exactly.
That's part of the problem.
But
it's like,
that's interesting that problem still exists today.
Yeah, well, I mean,
what do you like? I'm curious to see what you guys like think about that. Like in modern times, like, is it so far different from Bob Kane and Bill Finger?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. Actually, I think it's probably worse for us now than what it was at that time because companies know there's a lot of people that would like to work for them, so they take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, this is just capitalism, right? Like this is really what it is. So. We were just talking about how Disney bought Marvel. Now that Disney bought Marvel for $4 billion or whatever, and now they've made 14 billion after they've bought it, right? So or whatever, right? They've made way more money than what they paid for it. Mm-hmm. So maybe that was Star Wars that they bought for $4 billion. Any rate, yeah, Marvel may have been cheaper. It was $4 billion? Okay.
Marvel Entertainment.
So they bought Marvel. Now Disney has made way more money than what Marvel was making because Disney has the ability to invest in it. You don't see Marvel coming back to Disney and saying, hey, you guys did really well with our stuff. You owe us more money. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
It's weird.
LucasArts for $4 billion too.
Oh, okay. Well, apparently $4 billion is the going rate for.
Except when they bought Fox, Disney acquired Fox's film and television production and distribution business. They paid $52.4 billion.
52 billion?
52 billion.
That's crazy. I mean, I think that was the most expensive company purchase ever.
Like, I mean, so like Disney pretty much owns everything now.
Disney is starting to own all of entertainment. Yeah. It's a big problem.
They're the Amazon of entertainment for sure.
Yeah, the Amazon of entertainment.
How much of that money Disney's heirs get?
Who knows? I don't even want to think about it. It's funny money. It's ridiculous.
I mean, he secured his shit before he died. That's for sure.
But I mean,
And he
there's
froze
a
himself.
difference between buying from a multi-million, possibly billion-dollar company and someone working in a studio flat coming up with characters.
But you gotta like kind of see if, like, what Gavin's trying to say too is like they had no idea that it was gonna blow up like that, right?
Right, but does it matter? So what I'm saying is, okay, let's say I create a character and they're called Sailor Moop. And that character
try to reach for a different name.
Let's say that character goes nowhere. Does it matter to have in the contract a stipulation that says I get so much money off of royalties? No, because that character goes nowhere.
Right.
It only matters when that character goes somewhere.
When the character goes somewhere. Yeah.
That's why what you should do is like if you're like, hey, I'm gonna sell you rights to this character, but you say I'm gonna get a percentage of this. But if you guys happen to get to a larger percentage of like number X, whatever, then I get another kickback,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, but no, I don't think any business is actually going to sign that contract.
Somebody might
because here's the thing. The business bought the character, and they're the ones that are now growing that character. They're investing in this character, and then they're the ones who are going to be reaping the rewards. And they don't want somebody who created the character to come back and be like, "Oh, you guys did a really good job marketing that character I came up with. I didn't think you guys were going to do that well with it. You owe me more money."
Sure, but at the very least, from the get-go, thinking about it that way, at least from the get-go, they should give the artist or the original creator a percentage for life or whatever.
I mean, that would be good.
Yeah, so I think that's what we're reaching with this topic is that companies can be better and more moral. And Bob Kane was kind of a piece of shit and not moral and convinced himself. So the key is have a lot of babies. Alan, have a lot of babies. Gavin,
where's this going?
Gavin, whatever, do what you gotta do. And then that way these children can fight for you in the future to make sure that your legacy.
Oh, I get it. I'm gonna be like when my kids are like, do you love me? Yeah, secure my lineage.
This is a good point.
Like, don't let them steal the ideas.
So this is a good point.
What I've learned from this conversation, what I've learned is that the current state of artistry and writing in comics or whatever industry is the same as it was with Bob Kane and Bill Finger, and we have to rely on the generosity of the person or industry or company. So have a lot of babies so that they can fight for you in future documentaries. That's what I've learned.
Around on me.
Yeah, and it's not that it's as bad as it's worse now.
Yeah,
it's worse now in that.
Well, that's why
companies know that you would come back. Companies know that if they don't have an ironclad contract that says they own what you just made, that you would come back.
Which is why they have very high-paying lawyers, higher paying than you guys can afford, to make sure that you guys don't.
What's that supposed to mean?
You know what it means.
Okay, so I think
like there's. Companies, I want to make a quick side note on like Image Comics. Do you remember Image? They're still.
Yeah.
But like that company was created by, Jim Lee was one of the people that created it, and he went back to DC now. But it was created by a bunch of artists who were like working for like Marvel and DC, and
they're frustrated.
And they're frustrated, and they said, "Hey man, we want to maintain the rights to the characters we create." So they went and created their own.
Oh wow!
Right.
So Image Comics is like kind of a co-op.
I think it started out being a co-op, and then the group. It's basically says. There's a lot of information on Wikipedia, but they found the illustrators that they went with. There was Todd McFarlane, who was doing Spider-Man at the time. Jim Lee was doing X-Men. Rob Liefeld was doing X-Force. Mark Silvestri was doing Wolverine. Eric Larson was doing Spider-Man. Jim Valentino was doing Guardians of the Galaxy. Will Portacio, I can't remember how to say his last name all the time. X-Men. So they were and Chris Claremont, who was a writer for X-Men.
Yeah.
Right? So these are all like Marvel guys who just buy, but and then it says each Image partner founded his own studio, which published under the Image banner, but was autonomous from any central editorial control. Claremont was not part of the partnership. And it says McFarlane created his own thing called McFarlane Productions. Wildstar was Jim Lee. Highbrow is Eric Larson. Shadowline, Jim Valentino. Top Cow is Mark Silvestri. And Extreme Studios is Rob Liefeld. And then, and then now they own a ton of stuff. They're one of the biggest, they're one of the largest comic book publishers in North America.
I think there's something to learn here. I think that we could take a cue from what they did.
Get a lot of money, make your own industry, make your own publishing company.
No. You don't need a lot of money to do it. You just need a way to profit share with other illustrators.
Exactly.
So how interesting. I wonder if there's a way to make a product or maybe a publishing company, and you combine your power into, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're all gonna own, we're gonna all of us are gonna share 50% of this, and then if you're the person who made the thing, you get 50% or something, right? There's a way to like make sure you can all work together and pool a certain percentage of money, so that you can help market everybody's products.
Yeah,
but
at the end of the day, like I've got like I want to be able to give I'd love to be able to do well enough with my stuff where I can give something back to every person that's helped me create it, right?
Well, I think you can make a thing and structure it that way. I think it's like let's say a bunch of illustrators got together and they wanted to make a card game, and the card game needs 200 cards. So you have 200 artists, each make one card, and you give them a percentage of the sales of the game.
Sure.
I mean, it'd be a nightmare to art direct, but it's a way to do it.
Be like everyone has to draw like Todd McFarlane. Get it done.
Todd McFarlane. Big bulging muscles. Everybody has quads the size of their torso.
Dude, are you mocking Todd McFarlane?
Yes.
Okay, well, moving on from this topic, I'm curious to hear what you guys think, because like Gavin all weekend was like, "This is blowing up. This is blowing up," and it was about Terry Goodkind's total dismissal and rude comments about an artist's work for his novel cover. And what's interesting is this was a big hit in the artist industry, but I never heard of it. I would not have heard of this had it not been for Gavin.
So it did hit mainstream news.
So why don't you explain, recently,
Definitely
so why don't you
hit
explain
Cool
what
and
happened?
a bunch of other comic venues.
Okay. So here's what Terry Goodkind did.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, let's bring it up. If you got it up, let's actually quote him.
Yeah, let me bring it up.
So I'll sort of paraphrase until you have the actual quote. He posted on his social media about him basically saying the cover to one of his books was terrible and that he wanted to poke fun at it, and he did it as a contest.
So yeah, if I blow this up,
yeah, can you blow it up?
Right here, it says Shroud of Eternity is a great book with a very bad cover, laughably bad.
Okay, wait.
First of all,
Terry Goodkind has to tell us that his book is great.
Yeah.
But continue.
Right. Laughably bad. So let's have some fun with it. Tell us what you think of the cover in my next post. And he put a poll. The poll is above. And we'll pick 10 random entries to win a signed copy of the hardcover. We'll pick the 10 winners on March 1st. Everyone's welcome to play. I'm an asshole. Blah, 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 blah.
Does he actually say he's an asshole?
No, he just says, just cast your vote. Just a comment.
Okay.
But,
well, it's not just quote.
So,
question, Bastien commented. He's like one of the first people to comment. And said, it was nice working with you, Terry. What you're doing is totally disrespectful, as if I didn't create those covers according to exactly what I was told to do. In my entire career, I have never seen an author behaving like that.
Yeah, so if you're not sure what we're talking about, look up Terry Goodkind's Shroud of Eternity cover. But...
Right. Yeah, if you can't see the video. So
do you want me to leave it up? I stopped it.
The cover itself it's serviceable. It's not the best cover I've ever seen,
it's also
but it's
not
like
the worst.
It's not terrible.
Cover, man, if you know Bastien's work, his work is amazing, and this cover is exactly what you'd expect if you hired Bastien.
We're talking about a multiple-time award-winning artist. He's been in Spectrum multiple times. He was on the cover of Spectrum,
Spectrum 22.
Yeah. So this guy knows his shit, and you're gonna post this cover and basically call him out as being like, oh, this cover is terrible. And so Terry Goodkind is trying to pass off as he was upset with the process, and they were protesting the cover when the art directors were working on it, and they basically got overruled. And
oh, really?
Yeah, that's kind of what he's trying to say. So this is sort of like him going to social media and protesting against his publisher.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, I don't know. At the end of
encourage fans to mock the
cover.
So
at the bottom it says,
I'm not defending him.
So at the bottom of this Bleeding Cool article says, Goodkind went on to explain that his publisher Tor Books commissioned the artwork, sent it to Goodkind at the last minute, and overruled Goodkind's complaints and those of his team. Goodkind said that the purpose of the contest was not to insult the artist, but rather to encourage his publisher to be more thoughtful about cover art in the future. He also noted that he would leave the contest up and give away the books as planned. But whatever. If he had a problem with his publisher, he should take it up with his publisher. What he did was a very bullshit asshole move.
Right.
Which does it tie into my point that no one understands, like an author doesn't understand his own publishing process and cover process.
Right, he doesn't understand the process it took in creating this cover. Yeah, I feel like the whole thing was really in bad taste, and Terry Goodkind should be ashamed of himself.
Yeah.
And I guess it's like, if you don't understand the process, I think this is an actual, like, an author problem that comes up a lot, is not sort of understanding that, okay, you're working with a publisher. The publisher is going to have an opinion. They're going to have final say, for one, because they're publishing you. So you're going to, at the end of the day, have to be okay with the decision that they make, or you need to find a new publisher.
But how Trump is that? This is a great book. This is a great book with laughably bad art. I just want to say it's laughably bad. You're going to get a free copy. You're going to get a free copy.
Like he's Oprah Trump?
Yeah.
You get a book, and you get a book, and you get a book. So I'm going to run in there with no guns, and I'm going to stop the guy.
I don't even want to talk about it. That's the dumbest thing I've heard all week.
Yeah, it reminded me of this topic we're talking about, because to me, the larger problem is that people do not understand or there's a divide between understanding how the artwork gets to be made or the writing gets to be made.
Well, here's a weird thing too. So Terry Goodkind writes this book. He's getting paid a shitload of money for the rights to this book, right? Tor's publishing it. They're making a shitload of money because they're selling it. How much did the cover artist get paid?
Exactly, yeah.
I made
selling that book.
He got paid X, whatever his cost was, which I don't know what. I think it's Tor, right? I don't know what they pay.
Couple $1,000 maybe.
Those guys, like, Tor is a very reputable, well-known publishing house.
It wasn't Tor, wasn't it Macmillan?
No, it was Tor for this book.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But I just find it hard to believe that this guy had a problem working with them. It's like, what? Like, nobody's ever, to the best of my recollection, nobody's ever complained about a Tor cover or.
Okay. So, Alan, what did you think of this cover? Gavin?
I actually really like the cover. Like,
so, that was the other thing. Let me bring this up too. Terry Goodkind pointed out that he was like, or maybe somebody in the comments pointed out, they're like, well, if the artist had read the book, they would have known that this was a terrible interpretation of this character. And I'm like, okay, first of all, the artist usually doesn't even get time to read the book, doesn't get a copy of the book, basically just gets a description of what the art director wants them to paint, right? They don't have time to sit and read this book. They've got a deadline. So it'd be great if artists got paid enough that they could spend time and read the book. Like,
they were like, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna take a week and a half to read the book, and then you're gonna spend another week and a half creating the art.
Cool. Right. Or a week and a half to read and draw it or make it. Yeah.
There's no way. You're not you're basically given a treatment on what you're supposed to create, and you create it, and you don't know what the end result's gonna be. And obviously, that whoever made that comment is also an asshat.
So here's the thing. It's like, I don't know how good or bad the cover is. All I can judge is the piece of artwork. I don't know how well it represents the book. The artwork itself is rendered beautifully. It's executed great. It has great composition. It has great color. It has, like, it's painted masterfully, as I would expect from this artist. And if it's a misrepresentation of the book, I would not know that because I haven't read the book. Right. So if this is their first experience of this book, they will also not know that.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, and Terry Goodkind's not a first-time author, but not that it matters.
He's been around long enough to be more of a professional about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I was trying to make a stand. Well, fucking call them up and make a stand. Don't.
Exactly. That's what frustrated me so much. Is like, Terry Goodkind, Shannara Chronicles. He has like a TV show on MTV and like.
No. Shannara's not Goodkind.
Oh, is it not? Oh shit. Okay. Well, anyway, the point is he's been around forever, right? So it's like, he should know better. Like, doesn't he know his own process? I guess that's what I mean. It's like, Even he doesn't know his own.
Shannara's Terry Brooks. Sorry, I had to confirm that.
Different Terry.
Don't.
Wrong Terry.
But the thing that I also the one
writers, right? In a week, you got a book. I'm just kidding. I'm a writer. I'm just kidding. I don't believe that.
Okay, I think we gotta wrap this thing up.
Real quick, the key. The one thing I and the whole debacle that happened with that I read that really stood out to me was, what if he had done this to a beginning artist? Like, what if he had done this to an artist that's like myself, for example, right? I've only been doing this for like 2 or 3 years. Like, if he had done that to someone like myself, he would have totally like burned my career right there.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. That was one thing that the artist said was, this could have hurt my career. You know,
in the case of Bastien, I think he's fine. But
he's in a position where he's fine, sure. But yeah, I guess what you're saying is like, okay, I still think that the illustration community is a bunch of really good people, and they would have stood up for an artist like if they were a nobody too.
But the problem is, I didn't even hear about the story. It doesn't matter about it matters about the illustration community, but also doesn't matter.
It matters because
a bunch of us are there's a bunch of illustrators who want to work on book covers and stuff, and it's like if an author is going to be an asshole to them.
Well, here's what this situation told me. This situation told me that there's enough people in the online artist community that can come together and make change happen.
Hell yeah.
They got together, they mobilized, they posted on this shit, and it got picked up by major news outlets, and they pressured Terry into apologizing. That happened. So here's what we need to do is get together and start righting some wrongs that are happening to us in this industry.
Only thing I didn't agree with on the whole thing was they made their point, right? A bunch of people called him out and he apologized, and then but instead of letting it die, he's still getting I feel like he's still getting hate mail, whatever you want to call it. But I feel like there's a point where you got to be like, all right, he's learned his lesson.
Well, let's hope so.
If you keep attacking him, you're no better than him.
Yeah. At some point, you got to be like, okay, that we got to the.
Well, what was a bummer is like what Gavin pointed out is he didn't apologize until
it took a while.
National.
He didn't apologize until it got picked up by news outlets.
Once it hit Bleeding Cool, he was like, I better do something.
Like, yeah.
What's frustrating?
He might have been coming off a hangover. Come on, cut him a break.
Yeah, but there's this attitude that he had and his commenters had of feelings. God, so many feelings.
Oh, yeah, people got offended.
You're so PC. Yeah. Why can't I have an opinion about my own book? Road. And it's like, no, you're being irresponsible.
You can have an opinion about the book. You can even have an opinion about the cover, but it's the way he went about it.
But that's what I'm saying. There was this attitude until it was called out nationally on
Golden rule, and we should end the episode on this. Go to recommendations. Golden rule is that you criticize in private and you praise in public.
Exactly.
Done.
Totally.
All right. Recommendations. My recommendation for the week.
I already know what you're going to say.
Is the movie Annihilation. And go see it right fucking now because this movie is amazing and it's a travesty that it was doing so poorly in the theater.
Already got sold to Netflix?
It will not get an international theater release. It's still in theaters in America. It's going to be on Netflix internationally soon. But it's still in theaters in America. Go see it.
Wait. It's going to be in theaters international?
It will not be in theaters internationally.
Do you know who's
not doing international theater release?
So nationally.
Wait, do you know who directed it?
Nationally, it's in theaters.
Okay.
That's what I said.
Gavin, do you know who directed it?
Alex Garland.
Alex Garland, who directed Ex Machina.
Yeah, that's a great movie too.
Adapted it for the screen. Mm-hmm. I don't know who wrote the original book.
Jeff Vandermeer.
There you go.
Oh, I didn't know it was based on a book. Even better.
Yeah. It's a book that apparently they most people said could not be filmed. They are wrong.
They always say that.
No, but they're saying the movie improves upon the book, which is interesting.
Yeah. This is a movie that should be seen in the theater. Go see it in the loudest theater you can think of. It's phenomenal. Yeah. There's a few little hiccups here and there. It's not a perfect film. It is phenomenal.
I'm gonna see if I have it on my list for Friday. I'm gonna go Friday.
Okay. So we might end up talking about it next week. So I don't want to give too much away now. Who's next?
I can go next.
Yay.
What you got, Alan?
I was going to talk about the television series Altered Carbon.
Oh my God. My brother and I were just talking about this today.
So I'm one episode away from the end, but I started watching it last week. And I was I thought the first couple episodes were everyone kept saying the first couple of episodes were so slow, but I'm like, if you like Blade Runner and you like that film noir style, that
Slow burn. Yeah,
it's a slow burn, but it's I think the cinematography is beautiful. Obviously they spare no expense on special effects. They're all over the place.
Yeah.
I think that I found out that it's based on a book series earlier this week, which I didn't know. So a lot of my friends who watched all of it said the book series is really good. You should read it. I'm like, okay. Apparently it's already been picked up for season 2.
Cool.
So that's kind of promising. I don't want to give too much of it away, but I think like the concepts are kind of neat. It's like basic Blade Runner style detective work, right?
Yeah.
But it's got a cool, like, I think like the future that they're portraying, it's kind of neat. It's got a cool idea with the. Did you watch it all?
No.
We haven't watched it yet.
Oh, okay. I don't want to give anything away then, but you should watch it. It's 10 episodes. I would say episodes 1 through 5 are kind of like setting up the whole world and the story and the characters for you. That might sound like it's a long time, but it's actually very intriguing, very awesome. And then 5 to 10 is like it just picks up the pace.
Okay, cool.
You're literally along for a roller coaster ride once you get to 5.
It's very interesting that we're getting a lot more original
sci-fi.
So yeah, like cerebral sci-fi.
Dude, I've read. Sorry to interrupt you.
No, you're good. That was it.
I was gonna say I read an article the other day. You know how like they release new stuff coming out to Netflix all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The article said that Netflix next month is gonna release 54 original.
Damn.
No way.
That's a lot of shit.
54. I don't know. I mean, I think they're like movies and television shows, and some of it's like indie flicks and foreign flicks. But
now, did they count individual episodes or did they count series?
I mean, I think I could find the list for you later. But it was a list of movies, television shows. It looked like there's some foreign flicks on there, but it's a total of 54 and original. Those are the two words that stuck out. Original was what got my attention. I was like, I love the fact that these companies like Altered Carbon, like, have you like shows like that and like The Expanse, if you haven't seen that, shows like those, like you couldn't have made these shows like 5 or 6 years ago. You couldn't have made them like 4 years ago, you know?
Well,
like last year.
I mean, we're sort of in the golden age of television. But all right, Drea, what's your recommendation?
Well, since I didn't think about it and mine last week was erased.
Don't bring that up.
By the internet.
That's not my fault. I don't know what happened.
So Samurai Gourmet is an amazing Netflix.
Hungry.
Is an amazing Netflix.
Do it.
Show about a retired businessman who goes and he has an alter ego samurai who enjoys food. So that could be my recommendation, but I'm going to go a step further and recommend a Korean show called The Cravings about a young 30-something-year-old woman who enjoys eating food. And I'm watching the second season now, which is really interesting because like it's in a way a bit deeper than the first season, but they're very short, like 12 minutes an episode, and each one is centered around a recipe. And it's kind of like a cute mix of Bridget Jones and delicious Korean food, so you can't go wrong. I don't know. So anyway, that's my recommendation.
All right. We had a couple of piggyback recommendations this week. But
yeah.
That's cool.
Cool.
I'm just giving you shit. It's fine. All right. That's it.
Smack you off camera.
We'll see y'all next week.
Have a good night.
Have a good night. Bye.